All right, all right. All right. Greetings, everyone. Peace and blessings be unto you all. I am Minister Jamie Eatman, and I am indeed on the rise. It's interesting. I'm doing this today. I'm attempting to do it on TikTok and my regular programming. And in any case, I hope it is working. It's a little hard to tell, but I will know here shortly the way things pick up or do not pick up for that matter. But in any case, again, welcome, welcome, welcome. We always begin the program with prayer, and I'm going to do that now. Let us pray. Most Holy Father, Lord, we thank you. We just thank you for this day, this opportunity. Father, we thank you for all that has occurred today. We pray you bless each family, their gathering, whatever it is they're doing today, Lord. And Father, we just pray that as we go through this program, that someone will be enlightened, that someone will be educated, motivated, or inspired to think about some situation or circumstance a little bit differently and possibly even rise to the occasion and better position themselves to rise above the situations and circumstances that they are facing. We just pray that everything that's going to be said and done will be to your honor and for your glory. We pray you have your will and have your way. It's in the spirit of Christ, I pray. Amen, amen, and amen. All right, all right. So, I'd like to thank those of you who are joining, and we're going to go ahead and get started here now. Today's topic, as you can see, actually you can't see yet, I won't be typing in a whole lot today, but the topic is liberation and the WeAre declaration. Those of you who joined me last week or before now, you probably heard me mention the WeAre, and particularly more importantly, as we talked about the on the rise, the on the rise. That's the aspect that we'll be addressing here. But it deals with I am on the rise. I'm Minister Jamie Eatman. I am on the rise. I talked about that all last week. But today I want to introduce something a little bit more pertinent. And because being on the rise isn't a great thing if there's nobody that you can share it with. Can you imagine that? People that go and they strive for things in life and they achieve it, but then there may not be anyone to share it with. So it's always good to have someone to be able to share your accomplishments with. And in this particular case, the program that we're about to do right now, it talks about just that. So those of you who are on Facebook, I ask that you please share it. And those of you who are on TikTok, you know the routine TikTok thing that you always hear people say throughout the program. I assure you, you won't hear that from me. But please, if you don't mind, do what you do. So having said all of that, let's get started here. Let's talk back up for a moment. Let's talk about being on the rise. I was in a room and someone said to me, the person asked me, they said, what is the OTR for? And they made mention that someone else was about to ask me that question. So as they asked me the question, what is the OTR for? I went on and I answered, I just typed in the room on the rise. And the person said, I thought it was on the road. And it ended there. And it's a shame that it ended there because there's so much more to answering that question than just saying I'm on the rise. But I would like to have introduced to them the concept that I'm about to introduce to you all now. There are a lot more people on the rise than that realizes it. Because when you think about life, we're always doing something. We're saying something. We're being someone to someone. So all of that is what I call being on the rise. It deals with educating, motivating, and inspiring individuals. So if you're mentoring someone, you're on the rise. If you're in ministry, there are a lot of people that tell you today that they're in ministry, then they're on the rise. On TikTok here, one of the biggest things that people say is that they're going to teach you this and they'll teach you that. When they're doing all that, that means they're on the rise. Not because I said so, but think about it for a moment. If you're new to something and someone pulls you in or guides you, leads you, that individual is helping you to rise. They're helping you to move farther. They're helping you to advance. So that help is what I'm referring to as being on the rise. And individuals on the rise, they usually have a certain motivation about them. If you think about it, what do? What motivates you to do what you do? whatever that something is usually going to surround someone else. You know, some people tell you, well, when I was younger, I saw this person do that. That motivation dealt with someone that was on the rise. And what I mean by on the rise was that person that they watched, or that person that they saw, they inspired them, they motivated them, and in some cases, they educated them. You know, I'm from Alabama, a little place called Utah. And when I went into the military, it was really interesting because when I went into the military, there was a lot of things I had not seen. There was a lot of things I had not done. And actually, when I went into the military, I had left a little place called Utah, and I was actually living in Tuscaloosa. You know, they have the University of Alabama, and all the people that saying today, "Roll Tide, roll." I'm not one of them. I know Alabama in a Tuscaloosa in a more different and intimate way. So I'm not one of those individuals. But I'm giving you this example to kind of show you something. When I joined the military, there was a lot that I learned. And there were a lot of people that were there to teach me. You know, when you join the military, it's leadership is everywhere. As a matter of fact, everybody's inspired to be a leader, trying to be a leader. And that's what I want to talk about today. We are a declaration declaring that we are on the rise. But before you can actually declare you're anything, you have to know what that something is. So you all are in for a treat today, because when you think about, I got two words there: liberation and declaration. Liberation and declaration. And they're very important because some of us may not realize it, but we are declaring and celebrating some things that don't actually belong to us. That's a reality. And I'm going to touch on that. But in addition to that, I want to bring it back around to where it is a we are thing. And when it becomes a we are thing, then we understand it because it becomes about us. Now, how or who is the us? Hopefully, we'll decide that as we move forward. But first thing I want to say is welcome. Thank you all for joining me. It's indeed a pleasure. I don't take it for granted that you are here, that you took the time to be here at this moment, particularly those of you who may have a celebration going on or may have had a celebration going on. If you still have it going on, I think this would be a good program to share with those that might be there with you, because there's going to be some things said here that might prompt some interesting conversation. And that way, though many of you can't talk back to me, you'll be able to talk to others, those others that are with you. Again, thank you all for joining me. That's about as good as it's going to get. TikTok, thank you for joining me. I'm doing another program in conjunction, so if I don't call your name right away, it's okay. Please forgive me. Okay, so let's talk about this. Let's start off with the first portion of today's program. It's liberation and we are declaration. Let's start with liberation. You know, we are in this United States. We've been here. Our ancestors have been here for years. And think about it. Today, of all days, you know, my program usually falls on holidays. I don't know why it is. I don't celebrate holidays at all. But for some reason, they always seem to fall on the holidays. But I understand the holidays. I grew up celebrating them. And as the saying goes, when we learn better, we do better. And if a person hasn't learned, you wouldn't expect them to do anything other than what they know. That is why being on the rise is so important, because the information that you learn, the information that you carry, if you never share or impart it to someone else, it's not going to be of much service. It's not going to be of much use. So as I go through the program today, hopefully some of you all will at least hear something that'll cause you to think about some things. First thing I want to start with, let's go back to liberation. Liberation, and we are declaration. Let's talk about liberation for a moment. I don't know if you all remember this song, but there was a line I remember from a song. It says, if your mind isn't free, you got to have a free mind. When your mind is free, then you are free. But if your mind isn't free, let's say use the word bondage. That means you're in bondage. Now, bondage can be anything. Anything that holds you bound is a form of bondage. I'm using it in its simplest term. Yes, I'm going to get to some things that some of you all want to hear about, some things that some of you all don't want to hear about. But bondage is one of those things that we hear so much about it. Let's think for a moment in the faith community, in the faith space. We talk about bondage there, being bondage. They use the term bound to sin. If you think about what that means that there's something that's holding you that you can't break free of. So you're bound by it. People that are in bondage, great example would be those that are in prison, incarcerated. They're in bondage. They're bound by something. They'd love to be free, but that's not a privilege afforded them. So let's look a little bit deeper into this word liberation. The reason I really want to look at it today is because there was something that it sheds a light on people's thinking. It sheds a light on some things today that we may take for granted or may not have noticed. It's only been, I think, maybe a year. Maybe this is the second one, if not the first one. Juneteenth celebration that occurred in June. And then there's this July, the 4th celebration. Both of those deal with liberation. And it's very important that we understand the aspect of liberation. I want to put it in proper context because when I look at liberation, for me, it's something that frees me up. It's something that moves me to a point where I can do better. I can think differently. And that movement or that thinking, it makes a world of difference. So if I can just get you all to think with me for a moment, and we're going to talk about this. When we look at what took place on Juneteenth, I remember the first time I discovered Juneteenth. I was in the military. I was actually in San Antonio, Texas, which is supposedly where the idea of Juneteenth started. And I thought that, this is something new. I enjoyed it. But at the time, it was rarely celebrated. The people that knew were like people that were in the know, the people that today we would say were woke. But as Juneteenth became a more adopted thing, as it started to grow, I think a lot of it had to do with people in the military. As they went, they took that with them. And I learned later that it wasn't just Juneteenth. There's a term I heard, juju something, but it meant the same thing. It's a holiday that's not really a holiday. It wasn't a holiday, but was recognized. And the reality is it wasn't on the same date. Juneteenth actually refers to June 19th. And because I think it's the most widely accepted, it was actually adopted as the day to be celebrated, Juneteenth. So here we are with Juneteenth. Now, the reality of Juneteenth is an interesting one because when people are doing something and they take pride in it, that's one thing. But when people give you something and people kind of lose the celebration of the pride that they had in it, that's something else. And I think that's kind of what happened. Maybe there's still a lot of people that don't know about Juneteenth. And there's still a lot of people who did know about it, but because it's not as popular, while it is actually more popular, the rarity of a thing is what makes it a value. So when suddenly the thing that was celebrated among groups and people of color suddenly became a national holiday, you would have thought it would have caught on like wildfire, but it didn't. And that's the liberation that I want to talk about. When people are liberated, they become free. So sometimes people don't become liberated because there's an opportunity to. People become liberated when they have the mindset to be. The to be or not to be. That is the question. So we're talking about liberation. So going back to Juneteenth for a moment. Juneteenth is a recent legal holiday, and it was recognized as a celebration that celebrated somewhat history of people of color, Black people, melanated people, however you like to define it. I don't get caught up in terms. I know who I am. I make sure wherever I go, people will recognize and respect who I am. It's not the words that you use, it's the respect. So trust me, I know. And you should know as well. So when I look at this scenario that I'm referring to here and what occurred, I see where it was made a holiday. And, when you got the TV saying certain things and giving certain accolades that were never, ever done on that level, then you see people, you would think that it would be something that would be embraced because this is for this particular people. Well, You had your Juneteenth just like I did, and I don't know how much you celebrate in your city, how much you're heard in your church, your local television stations, your local radio stations, or any organization that you belong to. But reflect back on that, and let's bring it up to where we are today. Here we are today. Some of us, we may be celebrating, or we may have had our celebration. And when you think about the emphasis on the celebration that you celebrated today, remember I told you about liberation? Sometimes we are bound by things. We can be bound by tradition. We can be bound by history. But is it any different of a bondage than someone that's just bound by ignorance? I don't think so. And I'm just sharing this because I want to enlighten. When I say on the rise, the OTR movement, the On the Rise movement is just that. It's a movement designed to educate, motivate, and inspire individuals to rise above life situations and circumstances. So the situation and circumstance that I am addressing right now is liberation. And I'm choosing the two topics of Juneteenth and Independence Day, as they call it, the 4th of July. So if you look at these two things, it actually is a very interesting contrast. Why do I say contrast? I don't say contrast because it's Juneteenth and the 4th of July. If I knew what I knew now, or had the opportunity to speak what I'm speaking now, without it being overshadowed by the fact of having something to contrast it to, it probably wouldn't be as weighty. But if you think about the concept of 4th of July, when I heard about 4th of July, and I remember as they go back to 1776, that when they started there, and that history there that they gave and all that, and that history, if you study history when it pertains to the struggle for civil rights and all of that, but yet on 4th of July, there was a celebration concerning Independence Day. It didn't take long, or shouldn't take much, to see the contradiction. But how many of us see it? As they say, some things can be planted right there in front of you, and you still not see it. So today, that is kind of what I'm wanting to bring to the forefront: liberation. I'm bringing this out because I think that either people choose not to take any ownership or feel relevant or relative to the history, or they don't know. And I'm emphasizing this because what better day to do it than possibly on the day, 4th of July, a day that I am well aware of and have the opportunity to speak on a topic that I am on the rise wanting to impart to others. So the first portion of this is about liberation. And I would say this as a summary concerning both of them. The 4th of July, that was nothing but the 4th of July. It was a holiday. It was a time off. It was a time for family reunions. It was a time to travel. And people still see that because that hasn't changed. But here recently, in the last couple of years, we're talking Juneteenth as being a national holiday. And it is actually a day, I'm thinking it is national. I know that some states have some choice into what they do with it or how they characterize it, but it is recognized. So my point is, with Juneteenth being what it is, a day that's in contrast to the Independence Day of the 4th of July, will it, or do you believe it should or should not have as much significance here in the United States as the Independence Day, the 4th of July do? Now, that is a very fair question. But here's one here that calls for a little bias and a little prejudice. Do you feel that Juneteenth, June 19th, the date is celebrated or recognized as, I guess you might say, the Independence Day for Black people? Do you feel that it should be of any less significance to people of color or to the United States? And I say to the United States because here it is that This day is a day, it represents a time frame. It brings back more history than the Independence Day, which in reality, if you were to contrast them, one emphasizes, uh, uh, I wouldn't even say a lie, because no one ever said that it didn't represent 1776, the independence of the United States, or the independence of America here, as it pertains to their independence from the British rule. But when you look at the Juneteenth here, we've been in this area, but it pertains to liberation from an institution that the people who celebrate the 4th of July never experienced in the means, and and it had the impact that the Juneteenth celebration of independence had upon the people. So that people that had that impact, when I said bias or racist, they, knowing their history, should be somewhat have a bias, not a bias based on race or anything else, but a bias based on reality. If you think back to 1776, if you look at history and what was going on during that time frame, there's a big contrast. It should be evident that something is wrong with the history, the numbers, should I say, as it pertains to what our plight or our situation or our journey has been. But there's a saying: the people that don't know history is apt to repeat it. And this isn't a repeat, but I want to show you and shed some light on how um, much awareness, or how one can be aware, but yet it not make a difference. So when I look at this and I think Juneteenth, there's something in me that wants to embrace that. And then today I am visiting a friend when I was invited over. My thought, it's been years since I celebrated anything, especially the 4th of July. And when I came, I thought about it. Here it is. I accepted the invitation because it was a friend. But the thing that I'm going over for, it was a dinner. They kind of worded it that way. But when I look at what's going on, families want to have family reunions. We need time to get together, to come together. But when we're doing that, we're in we are in a system whereby we continue to pay into, we continue to give into, we continue to highlight at the cost of being considered or not being considered. So if you think for a moment, you say give them Juneteenth, what's going to happen with it? Nothing. And if someone said that, they'd be more correct than wrong. But if you think on the other side of that, giving Juneteenth is going to interfere with money made on the 4th of July and da 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 da. All those things that someone might have thought financially, but they were wrong because it hasn't. And you can be the best judge of that. This is the 4th of July. You are who you are. What are you doing? What did you do different this 4th of July? Is there anything you did different? And if there isn't, it's understandably, if a person didn't see the emphasis was not placed, I can see why no one would do anything different. But as I stated, my goal is to educate, motivate, and inspire. So in educating uh, individuals on this, and particularly you, because you are hearing me, hopefully come Juneteenth next year or July next year or both, there will be something that you have something to compare and contrast during this season. Because in reality, I want to give you a picture to kind of show you how seriously, or maybe how unserious, or how maybe there's a lack of seriousness in this matter. For example, we have people today that are actually leading boycotts of certain stores. They take the time to boycott certain stores when it's a matter of how much money they give or don't give, or what they didn't uphold, or what they took away or stopped doing within our community. That's one way of exercising some form of power. But then when you think about the concept, we are supposedly a people of power, seeking power, if that's any indication. But yet at the same time, when there's a time set aside that we could actually push for doing this and that within our communities, we leave that time unaddressed. We leave that opportunity untaken. It doesn't become an occasion until we take advantage of the opportunity. So we didn't ask for an occasion, or we didn't do it on a larger scale. The moment they talked about, I think it was DEI and taking some monies away, in a sense that some people might look at as being charity, they've been asked to do something they shouldn't do. I'm not one to get caught up in that conversation. In fact, I don't know all the details of it. But what I do know is that when I look at independence or I look at liberation, I see those two as being kind of one and the same. When you free yourself, or you're free from a situation or circumstance, you're able to go on beyond that. And so when I look at what's going on, even today, I live in Georgia. There's this individual in particular. It's clearly evident that the desire here is politics, but the thing that's being done, it's kind of assumes a voice of the community. So when you assume a voice of the community and you're out front representing the community, and the things that you do or do not do is reflective, becomes reflective of the community. So it appears that I'm talking to a community, but actually I'm not. I'm talking to individuals, because just as I say, I'm Jamie Eatman and I'm on the rise. There are decisions that I make solely based on who I am. Decisions that I make solely based on my views, my philosophies. So just as I make those views based on who I am, my views and philosophies, each individual will make their decision based on their views and their philosophies. So when it comes down to liberation, you can have a group of people here and they all dress the same way, they all look the same way, but somebody can actually be in bondage and there be no chains. And just the opposite as well. There can be some people that are in prison and they can be totally liberated. So I what I'm speaking now, I'm speaking to both. I'm speaking to anyone that has an ear to hear, or someone that would give me an ear that would hear what I'm saying. We need to really be concerned with liberating ourselves. We've been in a place, a space, and a time. If you look at the world around you, there are people that are truly showing what true liberation is about. They're standing up, or as I use in my space, they are on the rise. They're rising up, they're rising above. And in doing that, change is coming about. So individuals that are willing to be on the rise, there's a awareness, if not a change. And if they actually are on the rise, not only are they changing, but they're striving to educate, motivate, and inspire individuals to change. No one can dictate who changes, when they change, or how they're going to change. It's like just, and the Bible speaks of a sower. All you can do is sow the seed. You can't control the ground, how hard it is. You can't control if somebody comes behind you and pluck up the seed that you plant. You can't control if someone comes behind you and waters it, or if it lacks water. But all we can actually do is rise to the occasion. And this is an occasion for me. It's an opportunity. I could have easily not done this program today because this is the 4th of July. If I was concerned about the, the TikTok membership, awareness, or whatever, I would say most people are probably celebrating the 4th. It's not worth it. But I've been doing what I've been doing for years. My motivation isn't the Jamie, the I, the me. It's actually the we. That's the second half of what this program is about. So I want to wrap up the liberation piece. When it comes down to liberty and being free, people like to say it's a choice. It is a choice. Life and death is a choice. But when you start to think on another level, when you rise above the everyday conversation, the everyday situations and circumstances, there are some people today that can tell you that to find your life is to lose it. Let's say death, and to lose your life, which some would call death, is to find it, which is more abundant life. So when you hear these conversations, you need to kind of really think about what's being said, because it's very important we get an understanding. Why is it important that we get that understanding? We need that understanding because when someone is speaking as I'm speaking now, and there are conversations that will take place later, and someone says something, and maybe they didn't get to hear what you heard. You're going to say something, and what you say is going to be based on a couple of things. One will be what you heard, the other will be the bias, the prejudice that are within our mind. We process everything, and sometimes we are not free enough to process something properly. So if you don't get anything else about this liberation piece, what I'm saying to you is this: we are in a United States where there is more of a, I guess you might say, there's a more defeated people than there is anywhere around this world. Because when you look at what's going on, look at the things in the other countries. There are certain people that's been kicked out of them. The people that were in actually slavery, they called it colonialism, or however they worded it. Those people are clearly rising up and taking their prominent and proper place, not only in their countries, but in the world. And then you look at here, if you can't see that and nobody ever tells you that, you may not know that. We can study the Bible and we reading about things and people that we don't really know who they are. But in reality, we have more of a relationship with them than we would ever realize. But are we taught that? Some are committed to that struggle and some are not. But in any case, it's not important what some are. What's more important is what you are. Where are you? What are you committed to? What are you standing up for? What are you falling down for? What are you bowing out to? And what are you rising to the occasion for? Those are some thoughts to think about. In life, we go through life as individuals. We have our own situations, our own circumstances. But we can get a lot more done when we get to the point of we. We can get a lot more done when we get to the point of being we. Now, I'm about to shift now into the declaration piece, but I just want to summarize. Juneteenth is a day that supposedly symbolizes the freedom, not the document, the war, the war, the fighting, and that it was done, and that there were certain rights that the people that were formerly slaves had. So as they sent these soldiers from one state and one place to another to tell the slaves that they were free, the Juneteenth symbolizes the date that they arrived to Texas, and that date is what was set into law here concerning Juneteenth and what it symbolizes. So it recognizes that national day. There were some days other states might have. Some who are aware of those, then they know what I'm talking about. But if you don't, just know where that Juneteenth came from. It's not something that someone did to appease us. It's something that I don't know how and why, whatever their motives were. It's been celebrated long before it was declared to be a holiday, and that's like everything. Without struggle, there is no progress. So thank God the struggle continued. But now we're at a point here where it's about you and I. When we look at Juneteenth, where were you on June 19th? And wherever that was, how does it compare to where you are today, July 4th? And why is there such a contrast? Either way, it's liberty. If a person decided that they're not celebrating July the 4th anymore, there was a liberty to do that. The individuals that decided they were going to celebrate Juneteenth and make it their true day of liberation, there's a liberation in doing that. The individuals who decided that I'm going to celebrate both, they have the liberty to do that. But where the bondage comes in is where the bonds of ignorance, when people don't know. And when people don't know, it isn't always their fault. Sometimes it's the fault of people like you and I, people that know. And when we know, we are to impart that to others. So come next year, hopefully between now and then, you'll at least have this discussion with one person, or you'll go and pursue something for yourself as it pertains to this event. But whatever you do, come next year, I hope that this conversation sort of sparks some consciousness in how you celebrate. I won't tell you what to celebrate or when. I'm just giving you some food for thought so that whatever you do, you can do it with a liberated mindset. Or you cannot do it because of a certain bondage. And both of those things, they're positive, they have a positive side and a negative side. Just depends on how you may view it. So let's go on to the second half of what we're talking about here. The other half is the We Are Declaration. Now, the We Are Declaration, that piece there is personal. As a matter of fact, it is one of those things that's so personal. Someone might say, well, he's promoting his own agenda. They wouldn't be totally wrong, but they wouldn't be totally right. Because in life, we have to stand for something. And what I choose to stand for, I choose to rise. I choose to remain standing. There are times when I could easily bow down. As far as the appreciation of others, there are times when I could just bow out and I'd probably feel good about doing it. But I know who I am. I know what's in my character by the content of his character. You know, that's a comment made by Dr. King about not being measured by the race, the color, even their education or accomplishment, but by the content of their character. So when I am who I am, doing the things that I do, it really is a matter of character for me. So it's not really a personal thing, but it is something I take personal. If I didn't take it personal, it wouldn't be worth doing. You know, it took me a while to get used to introducing myself as I'm Jamie Eatman and I'm on the rise. You know, there's some people in life that are just straight up conceited. They wouldn't have any problem with telling you anything, doing anything, wearing anything, not wearing anything, or not doing anything. But I'm not one of those individuals. Yeah, I have a lot of, I wouldn't call them hangups, but there's a lot that goes into my character. And the thought of speaking before an individual and saying, I'm Jamie Eatman and I'm on the rise, that's a side of me that you wouldn't see other than probably my introduction. Because someone needs to hear that. But before someone hears that, I need to say that. And by saying that, that gets me to a point where I'm willing to be that person, or at least I recognize I'm challenged to be that person. And because I'm challenged to be that person, I have to make a conscious decision. Am I going to be, or am I not going to be that person? So if I make a conscious decision to be that person, and I start off with an introduction of being that person, whatever happens after that is going to be predicated by the fact that I stated that I am on the rise. People are going to deal with me based on I am on the rise. You'd be surprised. Most people don't know how to take you until you open your mouth. Let me say that again. Most people don't know how to take you until you open your mouth. And I'm one of those individuals, I really don't like to say a lot, or I didn't in the past, but being on the rise is one of those things that it kind of pulls you out. It pulls something out of you. I'll say it that way. Because if we say who we are, and that's who we are, but when something changes your challenges, changes our challenges. Some people never change, they just remain challenged. But if it changes and challenges who you are, it's going to be evident in something that you are doing, saying, or who you actually become. So let's go on to the we are. One of my biggest things at this point in life is I'm comfortable with I am on the rise. Now my goal is to get to the point of we we are on the rise. And that's a real challenge because no matter how much you love your friends, no matter how much you love your family, they're still individuals. And the battle or the persuading of individuals is going to remain a challenge because of something God gave his creation. He gave us all free will. And because of that free will, we are who we are. We stand when we stand. We refuse to comply, or whatever the case may be. You don't see God intervening in anyone's life to the point where he's forcing them to do this or he's forcing them to do that. And we are those people. So when I use the term we are, let's look at something for a moment. I mentioned to you concerning in my city here in Atlanta, Georgia. There's an individual that's been leading the fight since the little DEI issue came up. And it was rumored how we were going to come together as a people and all the things that we were going to do. And like most things, that died out. But what is going on is this individual is still leading a fight against certain department stores and so forth. And it's bringing about a certain popularity. But beyond that popularity, there's still a people. And those people, from what I'm seeing, we haven't come together fully. And in order to do that, it has to be an agenda that's greater than the individual. So we are going back to that. It's one of those things that it has to be something that's going to move us. When you think about moving us, that's not an easy challenge. Those of you who are biblical or spiritual minded people, in the Bible, when Ezekiel saw the dry bones, he was asked the question, can these bones live again? We've had so much spirituality, Bible, and all of this stuff fed to us, but have we actually feasted upon it? Have we taken it to the point where it was sweet in our mouths, but bitter in our bellies? Because just as Ezekiel was asked that question, we were all challenged with that. Instead of mine being the I, as in I, Jamie Eatman, I now have to look at the we. And if he was asked, can these bones live again? I'm asking myself, what can I do to help these bones live again? And some of you might not get that because in reality, we read the Bible and we know Ezekiel. We know what Ezekiel said and saw. But as the Bible speaks of prophecy, some things are prophetic. There's some things that's going on in and around our lives that we need to be aware of. And when we get the revelation of those things, then there will be something in that revelation that's going to help us to see not only those individuals and what they were faced with, but see ourselves and our challenge and what we are faced with. So that we are portion becomes a challenge. But for those of you who don't know, the OTR movement was founded by the OTR community. And I would assure you that 95% of you are asking, what is he talking about? And no matter how good your intentions are, or no matter how good or bad your program is, there's going to be some that will and some that won't. So I'm going to go back and address the OTR. The OTR is on the rise. There's a certain mindset, a prevailing mindset. It doesn't prevail in a particular city. It's a universal concept. And when I discovered this concept, that's what empowered me to be on the rise because there's some things that people face. You may think you face it alone, but it's throughout. It's in other cities, it's in other states, it's in other countries. I had the privilege of going to Africa. And when I went there, lo and behold, it was Africa's year of a rise, or it was something they were using concerning the rise, which just blew me out the water because my organization is on the Rise Network and Outreach. And I really felt like that was something that was spiritual. That was something that was God. But as I went there and I saw what was going on, and I saw that the mindset I had, there are people that have that same mindset. You find them, some of them will be in the church, some of them won't. Some of them will be your friends, some of them are your friends you can't tolerate, and some of them are your friends that you won't tolerate them. But if we're going to rise, there has to be a voice and there has to be a spirit. And the spirit is more important than the voice, believe it or not. When we discover what it takes to actually rise to the occasion, that's when change comes about. And until we begin to rise to the occasion, things are going to remain the same. I look at this wonderful world here of TikTok and I see so much division. I see so much unity. I see so much selfishness. I see people that are making extreme sacrifice. And it's encouraging, but yet it's discouraging. And I say that because, somewhere between here and there, we have to find our place. And that which we come and bring into a space, we have to guard it. We have to be intentional in all the things that we do and say. So I'm saying this and I'm sharing this because it's really important. We have to make a decision at some point. What am I going to be? Who am I going to be? What am I going to do? Anyone that actually follows me, there was something that I liked today. I try to find something to anyone that sends me a friend request. I try to find something positive to say about them. And there was this one young lady, and as I looked on her page, it was hard to find something to say positive. And not because she didn't have some great things going on. I could have told her about how sexy she was. I could have told her about how desirous she looked. But those aren't the things I call positive. But what I found this one picture, and it had so happened that that picture had some music to it that really made a profound statement. And I liked that picture, and I labeled it an inspirational moment, and I reposted it. And my thought was, now anyone that looks at this picture and goes to her page is probably going to wonder why would he post this? But the text I put with that picture stated that the more she took off, the less of her something was revealed, and that the more that she had on, well, I don't remember the wording of it. You all might want to go and check if you have the time. If I knew how to go through my page and all that real quickly, I would find that for you. But basically, I was saying to her that, you know, she was beautiful when she was fully dressed, but the more she took off, the less beauty there was to see. And I would tell anyone that, regardless of how they seem to think or what they think of their package and all that. But that becomes important because in reality, somebody needs to hear that. This person hadn't been on long, or if they had been, they were probably like me. They had very few followers, and they had very few people that they had actually followed. So by sowing that comment there, I hope it made a difference. But by someone else possibly going there to see that, the picture that it painted was a great one, because here's someone here that's clearly got all the goods, but someone is writing a comment, that's addressing everything except for that. Sometimes we have to be contrary. And when we are contrary, being contrary sends a stronger message than just going with the flow does. If you think about getting on one of those elevators, not an elevator, the yeah, let's just use an elevator. If the elevator is going up and you're needing to go down, that wouldn't be the elevator you want to be on. An escalator. So as we get on and we go against the grain, sometimes it gives us much more attention. And that can be a good thing or that can be a positive thing. If it's attention for the right reason, it's a good thing. That was Frederick Douglass who said, without struggle, there is no progress. Sometimes when we struggle against those things that everybody else is comfortable with, we aren't looked at very positively. But if we are true to our cause and what we are doing, we become comfortable in that struggle. So when I say the we are declaration, it's not just a matter of saying we are, it becomes a matter of declaring that we are. So when we declare that we are something, that something that we're declaring to be, people will actually see that. And not only will they see that, it will encourage us even all the more to be that. If you ever find yourself in a place where you are caught between, as they say, a rock and a hard place, and there's a decision to be made, you have a choice to make. When you make that choice, you will be known by that choice. And when you make that choice consciously or not, excuse me, that's the choice that you will be known by. And if you are in any position of leadership, or if you are following someone that's in a position of leadership, let me make that clear. If you're in a position of leadership, or you're following someone in a position of leadership, you're viewed by the actions of that leader. It's like being a parent. You never met these people, but they met your children, and your children did something that reflect that they have poor upbringing. People are going to look at you like you don't know how to raise your children. Contrary to that, your children go out of your house and they're out at a certain age, and all the things that children do today, and your child says, yes, ma'am, or yes, sir. You better know that that's going to stand out, and it will be a reflection on you, not just that child. So what we have to realize is that we live in a world today that's it's really more about I, me, or you. Because when people want to lift themselves up, sometimes they feel they can only do it when they bring you down. There are times when you may feel a certain way and you want everybody to feel the way you feel, so you might actually bring people down. But being on the rise is a contradiction to all of that. It's of having a made up mind of who you are. And because of who you are, you're going to impact others. And so when they go forward or they bring it to you, you know how to respond to it. And as you mature and you remain on the rise, you're going to learn how to deal with people that want to pull you out of your element so that they can feel good about where they are. And the thing that makes people feel good in many instances, it isn't so much that they might have done something, but it's what they can get you to do. There's some people that's probably looking at you today that's encouraged by you and the stand you take. Likewise, there's some people today that will tell you, and if not you, their friends, that I can't stand him or her, and they'll tell them why. It may be something you're intentional about, and it may not. But if you're going to be loved, you want it to be for the right reason. If someone is going to desire to be in your face, you want it to be for the right reason. If you're going to be hated, you want it to be for the right reason. Whatever you experience in life, there are just certain things you can't prevent. But as you go through it knowing who you are. Go through it knowing what you're standing for. Because at the end of the day, if a person hadn't discovered something for which they will stand, they will fall for anything. And there's too many people today that's just looking for the individual that's undecided. And when you're undecided, there are people that will help you make up your mind. and it's usually just not going to work out to your advantage or to your favor. I thank you all for spending this time with me. And as I move forward with the program, trying to do too, it's going to bring about some change. And whatever that change is, I hope that you will remain around to see it. Can't promise you my words will be any different, but maybe just some of the approach. I'm actually at a friend's house today, so my camera is sliding a little bit on one program, and the other here, I haven't mastered it yet. But in any case, if you found something that was said here encouraging, um, to God be the glory. If you did not, hopefully you found something that would be dissatisfying, something that may have stroked you the wrong way. But I want to encourage you. And another form, or important form of encouragement that people don't realize, is there's such a thing called dissatisfactional inspiration. Dissatisfactional inspiration. If I said something that caused you to think, or I said something that you see that maybe you agree with or don't agree with, change it. If I said something that helps for the better and it's not a part of something of who you are and what you're doing, change it. If I said something that you're already doing, then feel encouraged, feel validated. It helps me, it encourages me when I find somebody that's on the same journey I am. When someone somewhat validates a thought or an experience in my life. That's how the we portion comes into play. And when we begin to rise, as we begin to rise, that if you remember the quote, it's not my inadequacies that frightens me most, but my greatness. My greatness frightens me most because if I live up to my true greatness, I would be studying harder. I would be applying myself more. I'd have more to bring to you. So that portion, scare might be a different word, but I haven't been motivated to that point yet. I'm aspiring to that point. Remember what I said to you. I am on the rise, which means that as I encounter others, you are educating, motivating, and inspiring me. There was a comment I put in the room here that says, one of the viewers, he said, "Bring it, brother. Greetings, friend." You know, someone I know very well. I know, as they say, as the Bible says, his coming out and his going in. And when you know someone like that and they share a word with you, then it means that much more to you. Here on TikTok, there's a challenge because everybody that wants to be a friend sees you as a potential friend. And you can easily judge your friends because those of you who keep sending me invitations, not for your invites, but for those that you may respect highly, I will come to some of those. But it's a reflection on you that you sent it to me. So use wisdom in your inviting, in your regard, excuse me, as well as your disregard. Because when all is said and done, there's going to be a we. The question is, what will we look like? If I may go back to Ezekiel for a moment, when he saw those bones, he saw them when they were very dry. And between him and God and the things that God gave him to say, he saw them start to move. He even heard the sounds that they were making. And I don't know how that sounded to his ears, but I've seen some beautiful things and I hear some beautiful sounds that we're beginning to make. So as we come together and begin to rise on our feet, rise up and we look different, and people have to give us a certain degree of respect. But with that respect comes an additional step we need to get to. We need to get to that point where there's a spirit in us. And that spirit isn't an individual spirit, it's a collective spirit. And it really isn't a collective spirit, it's a spirit that we collectively have. That one spirit. And when we get to that point, then we'll be able to say, we are on the rise. We are on the rise. We can declare, we can make a declaration. We are on the rise. I want to thank you all for your time, your consideration. I know there's something that you could have been doing, but the time that you took to spend here with me. The program was Liberation and We Are Declaration. I'm looking forward to the day when I will be among whatever group. I don't know what group that will be the next time that I get a chance to make that declaration. Me and whomever, me and whatever group it will be. But, and I don't literally mean, just one of those mental or spiritual things. I literally mean when we come together and declare that we are on the rise. I'm not talking some day I die and go to be with my ancestors. I'm talking about the next time I am assembled among a group and I ask them to join me. I've gotten comfortable with the I am on a rise. I am on the rise. So now I'm pursuing and trying to get others comfortable with being on the rise. And that way we can comfortably say together in one spirit that we are on the rise. Again, thank you all for joining me. I am Jamie Eatman. It has been a pleasure to be here with you, and I look forward and ask you all to join me here next Friday. As a matter of fact, on Wednesday, if you would join me, that's Ladies Antoinette's Eatman program, but it is called Rise to Prosperity, and I am her co-host. So those 2 days, Wednesdays and Fridays, 8 p.m. Wednesdays and Fridays at 8 p.m. So you know what days to avoid me if you see me on the screen, or you know what days to join me. We are creatures of choice. Whatever you decide to do, be blessed and continue to rise to the occasion. And all that you say